on AM 560 The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So, as expected, the noxious Jack Smith filed a request yesterday to drop all 4 felony charges against President-elect Trump related to challenging the 2020 presidential election, the so-called J6 case. The 4 charges dropped: obstruction of an attempted obstruct an official proceeding, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, conspiracy against rights, conspiracy to defraud the United States. Chutkin, the judge in the case, equally noxious. Dismissal without prejudice is what she provided. Consistent with the government's understanding that the immunity afforded to a sitting president is temporary, expiring when they leave office. So leave to refile charges against Trump in 2029. Problem is, according to my reading of the statutes governing these charges, they have 5-year statute of limitations. These conspiracy charges, the statute of limitations is 5 years. So,
knowing them, they'll probably change the rules.
Well, you ex post facto it. I mean, that doesn't work. 2021 to 2029 is 8 years by my math, isn't it?
Yeah, you're right. Or couldn't President Trump just pardon himself?
Why? There's no need.
Yeah.
So where do these things really stand? And got some other lawfare questions as well for Joseph Moreno, former federal prosecutor with the Department of Justice and the National Security Division, former staff member with the FBI's 9/11 Review Commission, and a U.S. Army combat veteran. Joseph Moreno, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Good morning, Dan, Amy. Good to be with you.
Good to have you. Is my understanding incorrect? I mean, how do you toll the statute of limitations?
No, you're spot on. Obviously the best case would have been dismissal of these charges with prejudice. But you only really get that if you can show some substantive problems with the laws or the way a case was brought. This was done without prejudice because this was a procedural issue. Right. But that being said, most people agree that the statute of limitations will not toll during the term of Donald Trump's 4 years. So therefore, you're right, the 5-year statute of limitations should keep running and effectively cannot allow charges to be rebrought in 2029. Now, of course, 4 years from when he starts. Anybody can try to change that. These rules have not been tested because obviously we haven't had federal charges against a sitting president in the past. But I think most would agree that it would not be legal for a future federal prosecutor to bring these charges again, either the ones from Washington, D.C. regarding January 6th or the ones in Florida regarding the documents at Mar-a-Lago once Donald Trump is out of office.
And I know it's DOJ's protocol to not prosecute a sitting president. But then what's your intuition about how the Fulton County and Manhattan cases end up?
Well, so because of the Constitution's supremacy clause, these cases also cannot legally continue during the course of Donald Trump's presidency. But they're not barred by any kind of ethics rules or any kind of structures around that apply to federal cases. So if Alvin Bragg is really intent on restarting his case and trying to get a conviction and sentencing, which conviction happens at sentencing, not at the time of a jury verdict. So Donald Trump is not a convicted felon in New York, despite the fact his detractors like to say that. But if Alvin Bragg wants to continue this case and Judge Merchan agrees, and Merchan has been pretty hostile to Donald Trump, they can try. Fonnie Willis in Fulton County, she can try to move her case, although that's really just collapsed due to her own incompetence. Probably not realistic. I think that at that point Donald Trump will be 82 years old. I can't imagine there's going to be any public support for that sort of thing. So, I mean, Alvin Bragg might not even be in office at that point, probably run for governor of New York. So I think it's highly unlikely we'll see these cases in the future. But, you know, if prosecutors are that determined, you never know what they're going to try.
Well, one case that really broiled my blood was the E. Jean Carroll case, because they amended the laws to allow her to sue Trump, and such an astronomical amount. And she was even on CNN with Anderson Cooper, flirting with him, by the way, and said, well, real rape is when you get thrown to the ground, and that's not what happened here. So what happens with that case?
Well, Donald Trump will have to keep fighting that, because you're right on, Amy. They specifically changed the law from a statute of limitations, as we pointed out in the federal context, which was 5 years in New York State, to allow this case from 30 years ago to be brought. So you're already taking a case that's really, really stale in terms of the facts, and allowing it to move forward, again, because, let's face it, Donald Trump was a political enemy of the powers that be in New York State. And so he's got a good argument to fight that case. The fine is outrageous, something like $80 or $90 million, so that's unlikely to survive as well. But that'll be a fight that Trump has to keep on fighting while he's in office.
Just like the Leticia James, fraud case, right?
That case is a real travesty. I mean, that one I think will be overturned on appeal. Even the New York State judges at the appellate level were very hostile to Leticia James's team when they argued this on appeal about a month ago, really saying the law has never been used this way. To use a fraud law in a case where there's no fraud victim, not a single person lost a penny in that case. The $400 million fine that Judge Engoron in that case found, numerous applications of that law just really, really stretched to the breaking point. So my prediction is that case is either completely overturned or the fine is greatly, greatly reduced to something much more reasonable. It should be like $1 million, if that much.
There is, that's not the only J6 case of interest, particularly because Trump campaigned on intimating he would commute or pardon nonviolent J6 convicts. And right now, there's still J6 defendants being sentenced. 21 were sentenced last week. There's new trials. And there's some call for Trump to put out a statement, sort of like he did on Jack Smith. Jack Smith's going to be gone. That Matthew Graves, the prosecutor there in those J6 cases, is that he's going to go, and we know that he is going to go, and that his replacement is going to put a hold on said prosecutions. What do you think about that?
No, I think that's right. I mean, I think that all of this just goes to show how absurd these cases were, and what a kind of a waste of these years, a waste of money, a waste of prosecutors and investigators that should have been actually prosecuting real crimes, clogging up the courts with these cases. And I think the real travesty here is beyond all that, the fact that we've now crossed this threshold, something that we've never done in 200 years in this country, which is to aggressively use the legal system, both civil and criminal, against a political opponent. And I really hope the American people have seen this and said, no, we're not going to let this happen again. But now that we've crossed this precipice, I mean, it's going to be tempting for future politicians to do this again. And I'm not really sure, despite the fact that these cases have been dismissed or withdrawn, I'm not sure there have been any real consequences for the actors here.
Well, that's where I was going to go next, which is, I mean, if you're a deputy AG to Pam Bondi, what do you advise her to do with respect to the performance of the DOJ under Merrick Garland?
I think some real safeguards around this kind of nonsense in the future. I think a real look at people's behavior. I'm a little concerned that we're going to see leaks. I think that's kind of the next step. I think we've seen that kind of bad conduct in the past of where maybe these prosecutors couldn't bring these cases, that the J6 or the Mar-a-Lago case, but we'll see leaks to the media, which would be really egregious. And if that does happen, there should be investigations that are thorough. But again, a lot of this hinges on people's conduct and the ability of the American people to hold politicians and people like the Attorney General accountable. I think people were upset. I think that actually helped Donald Trump get reelected here. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's going to be the voters that really decide if they're going to tolerate this thing or not.
What about with respect to FBI and whoever the new FBI director is, the sort of full accounting for of the FBI's behavior in and around J6? I mean, is that something that Bondi and the new FBI director should pursue as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think Chris Wray sees the writing on the wall that his time as FBI director is not long. I think there should be a fresh, aggressive face that looks at not just January 6th, but going back to Russiagate. I mean, that was a travesty. That was an absolute travesty that Donald Trump's own FBI spun their wheels for 2 years. They knew within 6 or 8 weeks there was no Russia connection to Donald Trump or the Trump campaign. And yet they kept that case going on procedural issues, trying to jam people up on false statements, trying to keep that going. And finally, Bill Barr shut it down. It should have been shut down 2 years earlier or never happened in the first place. That, I think, is probably even worse than January 6th. That was an absolute travesty and should never be allowed to happen again.
Why didn't Jeff Sessions shut it down?
Well, he didn't have the courage there. I mean, he tapped out immediately because he took this sort of kind of weaker approach that, well, I advise the Trump campaign, and therefore I don't want to look like I have a conflict of interest. By doing that, maybe some could say that he took the kind of gentlemanly road, but by doing that, he left this gap that was filled by Rod Rosenstein, who was a career Washington, D.C. prosecutor who also did not have the wherewithal to kind of take a hard look at this and say, you know what, enough. Everyone was deferential to Bob Mueller. Everyone said, well, he's a trusted D.C. figure. He must be doing the right thing. Well, he was not doing the right thing, and he let this thing go on and basically, torment the Trump administration from within for far too long.
Yeah, Rod Rosenstein and Andrew Weissman. Let's not forget about his chief hatchet man. I mean, this is a time now where whatever Marquis of Queensberry rules they were playing by 8 years ago, that's a no bid at this point. Absolutely. So, I mean, I think that the Trump window, not just for this, but for pretty much anything, he's got about 18 months. Right, to really clean house before the midterms come, and then people sort of get into campaign mode. So if he's going to strike while the iron is hot, it's now. It's with Pam Bondi, who could be a very tough attorney general. It could be with a new FBI director who comes in and really cleans house if he or she feels that's necessary. But he's got to act fast because it's only a matter of time before the sort of Washington swamp kind of regains itself, and people have short memories. And so I think I hope, for all of our sake, that Donald Trump acts decisively. He's got a lot on his plate, but this is an important one. Well, and a lot of this will be outsourced and will be the province of the Attorney General. Sovereign immunity. You hear Tom Homan talking about mayors if they try to knowingly harbor people that are fugitives from the law. If they try to interfere with a federal law enforcement operation, then he's open to seeing them charged criminally. What about Adam Schiff? He talking about Russian collusion hoax. Even sitting senator, soon will be. Even if there's no criminal conduct, there's no discernible criminal conduct committed by Schiff. What about, for example, pursuing his law license for any again, if there's evidence to support this, but a look into all of the major players in these frauds that were perpetrated.
Well, working backward, absolutely. I mean, law license is aggressive, but, for sure. I mean, the fact that Schiff is so shameless that even now he's still repeating this sort of thing and going on television to say it, and then that the networks allow him to keep saying that, it's defamation. I mean, he should be absolutely ashamed. And as far as sovereign immunity, if anyone can do it, it's going to be Tom Homan. I mean, these cities and these local prosecutors cannot be forced to participate in deportations, but they can be looked at and even charged if they impede them. So if they're impeding ICE's work in terms of letting out individuals who are subject to an ICE detainer and preventing immigration officials from arresting illegal aliens, they can be charged. And again, this is the kind of thing that it's going to take a very focused administration who is willing to be aggressive with these local towns and cities to say, that's enough now. Sanctuary cities are not legal. They are not supported by the voters, I think, as was indicated 2 weeks ago. And they got to strike while the iron is hot to kind of stop this nonsense.
Joseph Moreno, former federal prosecutor of the DOJ and the National Security Division, former staff member with the FBI's 9/11 Review Commission, and a U.S. Army combat veteran. Joseph Moreno, thank you as always. Appreciate it.
Dan, Amy, thanks so much. Have a good one.
Thank you. And he joined us on our Turnkey.pro answer line.
Listen to Dan and Amy on your smartphone. Download the AM 560 mobile app today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
I love giving jewelry as a gift. Roland's Jewelers is the perfect place for that magical holiday gift. Hi, it's Mike Gallagher. Roland's Jewelers is the absolute perfect place for the magical holiday gift for someone you love. Buying jewelry is about trust. Roland's is the jeweler I trust. I'm a customer, and I'm always amazed by their 5-star Google reviews, so many of them, but why not? They're the best. They're family-owned. Hey, getting engaged? Roland's has a large selection of mined and lab-grown diamonds at great prices. Choose from beautifully crafted engagement rings, from design